first time in Pakistan, the assessment of the in-school students. We used to have, I told you, NAT for the grade 4 and 8, but this time we are moving towards not only foundational learning assessment for the grade 3 primarily. This is what we are looking for, and hopefully many answers you will be getting through this discussion. But another decision we made in order to respond to SDG 4.1.1a, we go for the foundational learning. 4.1.1b, to report against, will go for the grade 5 instead of grade 4, and we had detailed discussions, and luckily Irfan Saab is here and Dr. Nasser is here. Mrs. The senior education consultant from the World Bank, she remained part of those discussions, and we finally decided to move from grade 4 to grade 5, and of course we'll continue for the grade 8 in order to report against 4.1.1c. So this is the first time we are going for the foundational learning assessment, and through their project, and thank you World Bank for supporting this cycle as well. We are lucky that we'll be having the technical support through the American Institute for Research, and the technical lead, Dr. Abdullah Firdaus, has formally joined us, and he will be here for a couple of weeks in person, and he'll be working with the team in our National Assessment Review team.
This focus on foundational learning has actually helped us step back and think of how important and how critical the early years are, starting at age 3. So, you know, we are lucky to have an organization like PI and to have the FL Hub that kind of brings these provincial conversations together, initiate a conversation on what they're doing well, what they can learn from each other, best practices, lessons, etc. And I think we are lucky to have Dr. Abdullah Firdaus here. You know, he's globally a guru for, you know, assessments and on early year assessments in particular. So, you know, really benefiting from him, and, you know, look forward to what he has to say today.
I would request Irfan Saab to share his thought first, and the questions we to respond, particularly when we will move towards Abdullah, and that's important that to bring more clarity about the assessment, particularly when you talk about foundation learning assessment. So over to you, sir.
My effort will be to just frame the conversation on foundational learning assessment. I'll not talk about foundational learning assessment, talk about assessment in general, and in that I will only refer to my experience in the last decade or so, participating in the development of some of the assessment practices, particularly in Punjab and KP. And so we'll just like to say a few words on where we are and what are the areas where we need more work, and then from there I think it will be a segue to some of the things that Dr. Firdaus Abdullah will tell you later. जहाँ तक assessment framework बनाने का ताल्लुक है, what is to be assessed, you know, in terms of the domains and the subdomain and so on, relationship with the curriculum. We have a curriculum which is made up of the student learning outcomes. The assessments align with those student learning outcomes. उस तरह से नहीं होता जैसे बहुत पहले आप किताबों से किताब को सामने रख के एक पर्चा बनाते थे. अब you know you have curricular outcomes और उसको सामने रख करके आप items बनाते हैं. Then we have table of specifications, उसमें भी हमने बहुत progress की है, and so that part of assessment cycle from what I have seen both Punjab and KP, and I can say some with some confidence Sindh as well, Balochistan में भी इस पे काम हो रहा है. We're doing that quite well. Then we move on to the item development, the review of the developed items, and then ultimately the banking of those items. I know if the colleagues from Punjab are here, I don't know if they're there online. They have developed an excellent item bank for all the grade levels for the primary and the middle grades. And I've seen some of that work. It's really very high quality work. इसी तरह से I think PI has also developed an item bank already. I know some work was done in KP as well on development of item banks. I don't know where it is, but you know they've been doing it quite well. And so अगर item bank नहीं बना हुआ तो बन जाएगा, लेकिन they know how to do that. In terms of the administration of the assessments, we have also come quite some distance. There are problems with including all the elements of the student population, so we don't have the representation as much as we would like of the private sector in the assessments that happen. I think PI is already working to include the private sector into the fold as well. Another way of reporting is to report against the benchmarks. We don't do that as much, and that's where I think we need to move towards. अब आप देखिए, this is just a tabulated comparison between the mean based approach and a benchmark driven approach. So आप पहली चीज़ यहाँ देखिए, unit of measurement. What we are reporting really is average. लेकिन अगर आप benchmark use कर रहे हैं, and again we will have more conversation on that, you report the percentage of students who are meeting the defined proficiency standards. You don't report average. एनालिटिकल फोकस एवरेज में ओवरऑल सिस्टम की एवरेज आप देख रहे हैं, लेकिन जब आप बेंचमार्क्स देख रहे हैं तो आप डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ स्टूडेंट्स देख रहे हैं अराउंड दोज बेंचमार्क्स, एंड सो दैट्स अ बिग डिफरेंस. Equity, visibility, I think I will not belabor this point, but आप जब benchmarks करेंगे तो आप disparities को देख सकेंगे. You know, for example, how many girls in rural areas are meeting the NPLs or not. Districts में MPL, you can look at how the poor districts are meeting the MPLs or not. MPLs are minimum proficiency levels, and I hope Dr. Abdullah will talk more about that. And likewise, I think averages की policy utility इतनी नहीं है जितनी कि if you report on the benchmarks. Okay. Pedagogical relevance. The averages are abstract for teachers. You know. I mean, it doesn't tell me anything about my classroom. Okay. But in terms of benchmarks, it's a very clear feedback on student mastery of very defined outcomes.
So over to you, Dr. Abdullah. The way you want, I mean, it's quite open, you understand things well, but we are lucky again, and thank you for joining.
The Federal Foundational Learning Policy has basically defined the benchmark for reading with comprehension. So a child is said to have foundational learning, foundational reading with comprehension skills if the child can demonstrate this following knowledge and skills. And there are, you know, there are a lot of expectations, performance expectations that students should be able to perform. But I'd like to point out the last one that basically says students should be able to identify the main purpose of a text that they read. And in order to identify the main purpose of a text, you really need to use higher level cognitive process as compared to just simply extracting information from a text that is explicitly mentioned. So you need higher level cognitive processes for main purposes of a text versus explicitly retrieve information from the text. Then in the numeracy, again, there is a benchmark that a student should be, is said to have meeting the numeracy benchmark if the student shows or demonstrate this following knowledge and skills. And the knowledge and skills are, they should be able to add and subtract up to 4-digit numbers. They can define, they can multiply or divide 3-digit numbers by a single-digit numbers, and so on. And here is the federal policy about assessment and examinations. So the federal policy recommends developing a common assessment tool with the federal administrative unit and provincial administration for foundational learning to monitor and track progress on foundational learning at the national level. And PI is supposed to be developing that common assessment, implementing the common assessment, and reporting the results on the common assessment.
अगर मैं अपने PhD और MPhil के स्टूडेंट्स को इनिशिएटिव ने जो गवर्नमेंट ले रही है वो पढ़ा रहा हूँ जो, तो अगर वो मुझसे ये पूछते हैं कि ये वाला जो इनिशिएटिव है ये किस तरह री इन्वेंटिंग द व्हील नहीं है, बिकॉज सारी प्रैक्टिसेस पहले भी हम नीस में, पीस में, असेसमेंट में और लर्निंग के हवाले से कर चुके हैं, जिसमें फाउंडेशन लर्निंग को हम बेसिक लर्निंग कहते रहे हैं. तो हाउ इट इज़, क्या नोवेल्टी इसमें है, क्या न्यूनेस है, क्या सिग्निफिकेंस है, किस तरह ये प्रीवियस प्रैक्टिसेस से हमारी इनिशिएटिव से डिफरेंस होगी जो है. थैंक यू वेरी मच. डिफरेंट होगी.
But my big question is about the sustainability of this, right? Like, what capacities are required, do you think, whether that's within the ministry or technical and otherwise, in order to enable us to repeat this effort? If you do a fantastic assessment now once, that's amazing, right? But then how do we ensure, and how are you designing now the process so that it can be replicated at the midline and end line?
I think that AIOU support to PI under this World Bank project will do some of these things. I mean, we cannot probably we cannot do everything, but our effort is going to be there to make sure that we continue with this capacity building initiatives. So Sam, I'm trying to understand your second question. You mentioned that provinces have their own benchmarks. Seems to be the case. Well, that's great to know. So, I mean, I think that whenever we draw national assessment, I think we need to really assess the common knowledge and skills across provinces. Our assessment has to be fair and robust. And so that the data coming out of this assessment should be utilized by all provinces. So we are going to be making sure that we do consult and review their benchmarks, and probably can come up with something that is most acceptable and robust.
So I'm thankful to our partners, PI, which is not the first time that we are collaborating on something. We have been doing it in the past for several projects or several reports which we launched here. The second thing is that the need of foundational learning is, there's no doubt in it that we have realized in the last, since we had COVID, afterwards we realized several problems which are inbuilt in our system of education, and they are all beyond this content part of education. We are teaching content to our students in a reasonable way, I would say, at different levels, but beside that there are other skills which we call as life skills, and for success in life they are as important as anything else. So this concept of foundational learning covers all that preparation which we need at the earlier years of education. When I was looking at this framework of foundational learning, I would again submit that we used to have the word literacy before, which includes numeracy and reading, both these things. And we've been doing it for several years. Now we have apparently replaced it with a more comprehensive framework, which includes numeracy and literacy, and plus all those life development skills which a person requires in order to succeed in life. So we expect that the framework, beside these two things, should address may address the social, psychological, emotional preparation of children, which can help them succeed in the later part of their life, we had debate on it several times before at PI with Muzaffar Saab. We already, Irfan Muzaffar Saab, we had this discussion, and we'd like to bring to your attention towards it as well. Sam is is the main person in this foundational learning stuff in ministry. So I'm not sure right at the moment in this first cycle of measurement, are we addressing it in one way or other or not? And I hope that towards the end of this all activity will not end up measuring literacy again with some other label on it. So I would like to have your attention towards that social, psychological, emotional development enablers, or at least measuring it and reporting back to the relevant institutions about it, that where do we stand and how can we help our children in their early years. I'm afraid my friends know, but I'm not aware of any such activity where this data is being regularly analyzed and the information extracted out of it is sent back to the schools, school heads or teachers to use it somewhere. So the issue which was pressed here more than once about how to interpret the information, how to interpret the data which you have collected from several exercises, collect less but interpret it well. So because collection of data, I feel that it creates a burden on the people from whom you are collecting it. So doing it in a frequency or a cycle may distract them from their jobs. So do it to the minimum level which is needed, and whatever you collect, use it to inform them back. What have we learned out of it? So with this I will close it. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to all of you for joining us.